Again, my name is Peter Tam, right? So just to give you a background, I've been retired for approximately 2 years from the New York City Police Department. I retired as a sergeant. Some of the assignments that I had was worked in the 9th Precinct in 1998 as a rookie. And then I went to anti-crime, which is a plainclothes unit, where I basically dressed like you guys and girls and try to find robbers and burglars, more violent crimes, right? And then after 9/11, I was assigned to the International Liaison Post, which is part of the intelligence division. They sent me to Singapore to be embedded with the Singapore Police Department in relation to terrorism in the Southeast Asia, right? So we have different types of international liaison posts. We have it in Santo Domingo, we have it in Lyon, France, we have it in Tel Aviv, right? All these different locations where NYPD actually gets embedded with their law enforcement, okay? And then the last place I worked at before I retired was the police academy. So I taught new police officers. I taught mostly academic part, what's the rule of law, the rules of arrest, what is all the different levels of suspicion, right? Levels of suspicion, probable cause, and all those good things, right? So there's other instructors for how to shoot a gun. We have other instructors in the gym area to teach you how to handcuff a person. And there's other instructors on how to drive a police car, right? So there's different, very specialized, right? So one thing I want to talk about is, again, through experience. I've been here for about 8-9 years, and a lot of the students always ask me, you know what, they won't accept me for the NYPD because of X, Y, and Z, right? Because my psychological was a failure or my background check was so on and so forth. But I just want to let you know there's different types of jobs, right? Even though you cannot become an NYPD officer, there's called civilian jobs, and I'm going to give you some examples, right? So civilian jobs are, supports the police in reducing crime. So for example, a 911 operator would be a civilian job under the NYPD, right? Another would be school safety agents, right? They're considered civilian assignments. Traffic enforcement agents are also considered civilian jobs under the NYPD, right? We train them, right? And there's others, okay? In the intelligence division, I worked with IRS, which is called Intelligence Research Specialists, right? So there's analysts, there's civilians, right? They don't carry guns, but they help us connect points in relation to terrorism, right? Again, they get paid from $60,000 to $100,000, right? To help us analyze, to decipher some of these situations in relation to terrorism, okay? And then here's another one, right? Investigator, right? There's investigators that work for CCRB, right? And they investigate complaints against cops, right? They investigate complaints against cops, right? In general, there's about 5,000 complaints against cops. So that's also part of a civilian jobs in the NYPD, right? And then lastly, I want to talk about before I turn this over is a lot of people, even in NYPD now, they don't know the different types of assignments in the NYPD. I'm going to scroll down. This is a directory of the NYPD. All these hundreds and hundreds of different types of assignments. Just to give you an example, right? Absent Control Investigation Unit. You must be wondering, what is that, right? Another unit would be, obviously, everybody knows about Anti-Terrorism Unit, okay? Right? Here's another Asset Forfeiture Unit. This unit talks about when we arrest somebody and they have a Bentley or a beautiful house and they're a criminal, how do I use asset forfeiture? You have to forfeiture that house, right? I have to connect that house that was purchased using drug money, so on and so forth. So there's hundreds and hundreds of units. I'm going to keep aviation unit, right? There's many different types of units. So so the next 40 minutes, I'm going to keep scrolling down so you have an idea all these types of units, right? Because if your interest is on flying helicopters, maybe aviation unit is the place to go, okay? So that's my thing, and I'm going to turn it over to the other professors.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, hello everyone. My name is Dr. Alpha Titus. I retired from NYPD 3 years ago. I retired from the homicide unit and the hostage negotiation unit. I did both. I retired in 2016. I've been teaching at John Jay for about 4 years. I started working at John Jay while I was still in NYPD. So John Jay, I enjoy working here. The reason I enjoy working here, not only do I get to interact with the future in law enforcement and the future in the criminal justice system, but I get to imply a lot of my knowledge onto the group of students that are coming in. John Jay is a great school because you get a well-rounded education. And one of the other benefits is that a lot of the faculty, like these professors here, they have actual law enforcement experience. You're not just learning the theoretical side of law enforcement and the criminal justice system. We have attorneys working at John Jay, we have chiefs, we have sergeants, we have people that have worked in the academy, all different levels, and then you have people that, like me, that have been investigators in some of the higher investigating capacities that the job has. So I started NYPD in 1993. I started working in transit. Back then, transit and NYPD and housing were separate police departments. So I started in transit. I worked in Harlem, 145th Street and St. Nicholas Avenue, and I only spent 6 months in uniform. Obviously, I fit in very well where I worked, so I was put into plain clothes very quickly, and the rest is history. I made detective. I got into the homicide squad, got into the hostage negotiation unit, and I love my job. If I had to do it all over again, I would still do it again, because I feel not only just with NYPD, but there are so many options within law enforcement in general. As you see, these are just some of the opportunities that are available here with NYPD. There are equally as many around the city through the different agencies that the city has, whether it's corrections or whether it's the district attorney's office or whatever the case may be. The other thing that I like to make sure that my students understand is that if you're interested in NYPD, not only is it a great and exciting job, but there are many opportunities. I got my master's degree through NYPD for free. I started my PhD through NYPD for free. The NYPD has a scholarship unit with over 80 scholarships. And those scholarships are not just masters, they have scholarships for law schools. St. John's is another one that I was looking at. When I decided to get my PhD, I looked at, they have a St. John's Law School scholarship that allows you to go to St. John's in the evening for free, okay, and get your law school degree. So there are a lot of options that you have within NYPD, in addition to all of the different units that the job has. The other thing I try to explain to my students is there's a lot of negative media going on right now about policing. You have your parents sitting next to you. I'm sure a lot of you parents are concerned. Do I want my child out there with all that's going on? Do I want them involved with all of the negativity that I hear? Do I want them to be part of this? Are they going to be safe? Are they going to be okay? My advice is do not let that negativity sway you from a great career, okay? It is exciting. There are many opportunities. There are many different avenues you can take to get off of the road so you're not even on the street. I mean, in this day and age, with the amount of opportunities that are available, I would say the average officer should not even be on the street past 5 years unless that's where you want to be, because there are opportunities to get off the street very quickly. And those opportunities just continually grow, from promotional exams to become sergeant, lieutenant, captain, all the way up to investigative tracks if you're interested in forensics, crime scenes, special victims, homicide, whatever it may be. There's a lot of opportunities. So I tell my students to stay the track. It's a great career. It's a great field for you to get into, whether it's law enforcement or criminal justice. I have friends that I retired 3 years ago, and I'm receiving my pension, and the pension alone, to me, is a great thing, because not only do you get what private industry has, where you can be in your 401k and you're this, that, and the other, you get a pension. And I've had to explain this to some of my students, because surprisingly, some of them were not even aware what a pension is. So a pension means that you get paid for the rest of your life. I get half of my salary for the rest of my life, as long as I live. That's a beautiful thing, on top of your 401k, on top of the other money that you have. I have colleagues that have retired as millionaires when you add all of that together. So don't let the money dissuade you. I know it starts at 42.5. Guarantee within 5 years you're making 6 figures, I'm sorry. guaranteed. 3 figures, right? 6 figures, guaranteed. So if money is the issue, don't let it be. If safety is the issue, the training is unprecedented. There's no other training like NYPD. I would say it's second to only federal training. And even some of the federal agencies come to NYPD for training. So that says a lot, all right? And it's just a great job. So I'm going to plug my own book, and I did this last time, so I'm going to do it again. When I retired, I wrote a book because, like I said, I connect with my students. And I had a lot of students my first couple of semesters working at John Jay. They always had a lot of questions for me. What's it like being a police officer? Is it dangerous? How do I get into this unit? How do I get into that unit? So I wrote a book. Anyone interested can come up and see me afterwards. It's a book. It's called The Personal Side of Policing. And this book goes into the details on the inside of what it's like to be a police officer, the positives and the negatives. It starts with chapter 1, which is all about the money and the different possibilities with the retirement, the benefits, the overtime, all of that. And then it goes into the details of the camaraderie with your officers, the public sentiment, how to deal with it, the safety, being out in the streets. There's a few stories about in here about things that I've been through and how I dealt with them. So it's a great book for those even interested in law enforcement, even if you're still going into criminal justice, but not necessarily law enforcement. And again, that is a major benefit of coming to this school. You have professors like me that can give you direct insight. Not only do we know the theoretical side of criminal justice and law enforcement, we know the practical side. So you get both sides. And like my colleague is going to explain to you, a lot of us professors, we become friends and close with our students for the rest of their lives, even through their careers. We exchange phone numbers, email addresses, and it's a bond that you're not going to get in other schools. So I'm going to pass it on to my colleague.
How you doing? My name is Professor Felipe Rodriguez. I've been teaching now at John Jay for 13 years. I did 21 years NYPD, 4 years in the state of Connecticut, and I also did 2 years in Florida. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, obviously, right? That's okay, because you know what it is? I'm passionate about law enforcement. In Connecticut, I got a little hurt. It took me almost 2 years, 2 operations to get back to full duty. And I still, guess what? I went to Florida and became a cop. Isn't that amazing? Family issues brought me back. I'm back home. But I've never stopped teaching at John Jay. I've been teaching at John Jay for over 13 years. And the reason that I like being here is because guess what? I'm not being paid to be here. All right? I drove 68 miles in the rain to come to meet every one of you. So that's kind of cool and important, right? And I'm passionate. I'm passionate about my teaching. All right? My greatest accomplishment as a career is that my daughter's sitting in the front row. She's a John Jay student. She graduated with a 4.0, also a Coast Guard veteran. How much more can a father ask for, right? So that's why I say John Jay is the school for you, all right? As parents, right, we're all saying, why should I come to John Jay? Because you have incredible professors, not because we're passionate about it, all right? Every day that I come up, students are asking me questions. That keeps me, I think, young. I'm 51, and I'm working now still as a sergeant in another police department. I told you, I still don't know what I want to be. All right? Police work, it's something that, you know, is innate. You have to have a calling for it. If you decide to come to John Jay, guess what? We will make you the best officer that you can. We've all had some incredible, outstanding careers. Think about it. How many places can you go and you say, Professor, I want to be a cop in Connecticut. Professor, I want to be a cop in Florida. Guess what? I have the answers to it. All right? And that's why I love this school so much. We're going to open up to quick Q&A because I don't want to, belabor this all day long. I know you guys have a lot of questions. So I'll open up the floor. We ready? All right. First question, anybody? Come on. Oh,
one thing is that, again, we're all retired, so we'll speak freely.
There you go.
Right? There's no secrets. We'll speak freely, okay?
We can speak our mind.
I'm really interested in more of the federal law enforcement fields. Do they recruit from this school as well? The federal agencies, Secret Service, FBI?
We have an open house. All the agencies come. They love to recruit John Jay students. All right. As you can see, we have an incredible open house. A lot of agencies come down here. We'll have agencies even not only the federal level from other states. They'll be from Maryland, from Washington, you name it. I mean, John Jay basically is where everybody wants to be if you want to be, I guess, right? That's what it comes down to, Professor Tan.
Yeah. So A lot of different states like Dallas, Portland, they actually come here to recruit, right? Again, I don't know their reasoning because every police department has their own rationale, right? Maybe they need more diversity, so on and so forth, right? But just talking about the federal law enforcement, right? Like everybody has heard of the FBI, right? So I look at it, the FBI is like the Harvard of law enforcement, right? They want the best of the best. They want you to know how to read. They want you to know how to write. They want the full package, right? So that's why perhaps their acceptance rate is very low, right? And it's very odd because they prefer majors that are law, accounting, right? They never throw in criminal justice in there. So, they're looking for a very special type of individuals, right? So it's a little bit more difficult, right? In comparison to other state and city agencies. But they do, one way, like CIA, like my boss in the intelligence division was from the CIA, right? So he made our intelligence division after 9/11 like a miniature CIA. So I understand his thought process, right? So again, if you're interested in federal law enforcement, which is great, I suggest going to the websites. They really tell you a lot about what type of individuals they're looking for, right? Do they speak Farsi? Do they speak Urdu? So on and so forth, right? Does it help? I hope, yeah. Any questions? And I'll give you the mic.
Good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank each of you for your service. It's very important at the front line all the time. Do you have any advice for students that want to get into law enforcement and maybe thinking about doing an internship or the cadet program as getting their feet wet?
Okay, well, I'll answer that. I'll start answering that while I walk down. The cadet program is a great program. I recommend that. Again, they are very selective. So, but it is a great program because they actually pay for your schooling while you're getting the experience working with NYPD. Also, there are many other city internships that are available. A lot of times the professors will help the student and guide them in the direction of the internships, but there are many internships, and there are different organizations and offices within the school that can help the students with that as well. But yes, I recommend an internship if you're not sure, you kind of want to test the waters, or you just want to have that background so that you can jump into criminal justice a little sooner when you do finish. I definitely suggest that.
The only thing with the cadet program, we get a lot of students that, it is a great program. They pay you while you're actually going to school, but you have to have 2 years of credit, 2 years of 64 credits, 2 years of college already, and it's very, very selective. So I've seen a lot of students get discouraged by that, so it's kind of a two-sided sword on that. So I just be careful with that program. Any other questions?
So I want to follow up on your question. I think is pretty interesting, right? I spoke about this in the last session. It seems to be common sense that if you're going to be in policing, you should have a criminal justice degree, right? So, but when I went to policing, I had an economics degree. I remember when the police academy, he goes, "What are you doing here?" Right? So, and however, if you have a different types of degree, you can be considered well-rounded, right? So if I had an economics degree or I have an accounting degree and I went to NYPD, they may say something like, "Oh, this person might be good for the financial crimes task force." You see what I'm saying, right? So you'll learn things in the NYPD regarding criminal justice, right? But but there's the positive and negative. The negative is that I didn't know much about criminal justice. I didn't know what was CompStat. I didn't know a lot of burglaries and robberies and all that good stuff, right? So it depends on who's looking at you, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Questions, please.
Wow, this group's a little different. All right, we'll adapt and we'll survive. All right, I know as parents, right, we say, why should my child come to John Jay? Right, there's a lot of the schools that are closer to home. Who's coming from Nassau and Suffolk? Yeah, right, it starts becoming a little bit of a travel situation, right? Train's expensive. It's not free the last time I checked, right? Right, very Long Island Railroad is very expensive. Well, I think what makes John Jay one of the premier schools, like the backgrounds that we have, all right? And think about it, tuition-wise, it's an expense. I'm not going to lie. My daughter's going to a state school, my youngest one. She obviously wasn't as bright as my oldest one. She went to CUNY school, but she went to a state school, but I'm paying close to $110,000 for a degree. And it kills me, and I'm going to be very, very honest. She still doesn't know what she wants to do. That's brutal. At John Jay, we have some of the cheapest tuitions in the country, right or wrong. So I think you're getting a lot for your money. I think it is one of the best schools to go to. Like I said, my daughter's done well. She's doing her master's now, so I'm very proud of that. And I said I put my money where my mouth is, right?
Yep, absolutely. You have a question?
So my question is, when you're doing degrees such as nursing, you have sections of the degree that take you into the field in terms of working in hospitals. It's compulsory.
Mm-hmm.
Is this degree completely academic only, or is there an element of that too?
We have a little bit of everything. We have study abroad programs also that they actually go out into the field and look at different countries. I had a chance to teach for the United Nations, so I went to 3 different countries, Peru, Honduras, and Nicaragua. And you look at their criminal justice systems, and it's amazing. People talk about how people get treated here. The individuals were in an outdoor cell, and when it rained, that's when they got the time to take a shower. So the experiences are unique. We do have study abroad. There is nothing mandatory or compulsory, but we are pushing a lot of the internships. So with the DA's offices, you could do one also like at the Bronx County Courthouse. They have Midtown Community Court. We are pushing internships because what happens when you end up applying for a job, we could both have a 4.0, but if I did an internship, it does give you a much better, qualifications and actually some real world experience. That's a great question. Anybody else? Nope. Yeah, I got to because of the.
Oh, okay.
You mentioned money, and you mentioned as a father you're paying for $100,000 for the tuition. Being that she was in the Coast Guard, I mean, through that venue, because I have some of my kids, for instance, I have one in college, the other one for coming. In terms of the military, Marines, Coast Guard, they do offer, that's what I'm getting, full tuition while you were there for 4 years. So you guys are retired. You know how it's not like now. It's a lot of money to send your kids to school. And then when they in there, you don't know which way you're going, left or right, and they're still making the mind, and then our package suffer. So in terms of connecting, let's say, Cadets Program that pays full tuition, some of the honors programs here at John Jay, what would be the best recommendation in terms of your experience and being that you're a parent to guide when you don't have, let's say, the financial aid, the funds there, because you at a bracket that is not going to give you any financial aid. Is it the military as the venue to get that full tuition? I mean, if your child is interested, like mine, in pursuing that as a venue to pay for that tuition, or any criminal justice branches that will cover that, or any programs that you know?
That's a multi one. That's a really good question. Okay, at the end of the day, yeah, we might have to defer this to my military expert. There we go.
Hi. Okay. So for both the NYPD Cadet Program and some of the military programs at school, like ROTC, and there's a Coast Guard program as well, all of those will give you tuition benefits while you're figuring things out. So your first year, you need a certain amount of credits to go into those programs. So your first year here at John Jay, you can research all those on your own and see what interests you. We have a military and veteran lounge here at the school that is open door for everyone to go and ask questions about those programs. A lot of people don't know that John Jay does have an ROTC program. It's just through City College. So you do your ROTC here, you just do your PT there, like your physical requirements there. But it is also through the school. John Jay is also one of the only schools, there's only 72, I believe, that have the Coast Guard Sea-Spy program. What that program is you apply after your second year here, and they pay for your junior and senior year tuition. They pay you a salary, and they pay you a housing stipend. So they pay your rent on top of a salary. You do that program for 2 years while working for the Coast Guard once a week. Then when you graduate, you go to officer candidacy school, and you're an officer in the military. So you're gonna graduate with no debt and a job. So that's another program. The Cadet Program we mentioned earlier is also great for tuition assistance. The military completely paid for my undergrad, and now they're paying for my master's. So I recommend it, but I recommend taking that first semester to really research what you're interested in. There's a Coast Guard auxiliary program at the school. That's just like volunteer work, but that helps you learn about the Coast Guard if that's something you want to do. Then the military office can educate you on the other branches. And the Career Service Center here also has resources for all of those, if that helps.
Now you see why I bring it. not always knowing what you think you know, it's knowing good people that know other things that can help you out. Yep.
Yes. You mentioned the cadet program is very competitive. My son here, he wants to be NYPD. Let's say he doesn't get into the cadet program. He graduates from John Jay. Is that, considered by the department heavily weighted or in terms of applying?
So I have a question, right? Why was he or not? Why he or she did not get to go to the cadet program? I need to know that question.
No,
answer
but you said
first.
it was competitive. They,
Limited slots,
Yeah.
budgeting, they cut it, anything, just in general.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the question again?
If he does graduate from here, does that weigh heavy on, him getting the job with the NYPD?
So NYPD is an open competitive exam, right? So if you take the exam and if I get 100 and you get 98, right? I'll get hired first, right? Because I'm on top of the list, right? So but you must have, one of the criteria is that you must have 60 credits
Okay.
to join the police department, right? And if it's a federal government, more than likely it's going to be a bachelor's at least,
Okay.
right? So it depends on the agency, right? And depends on, you have to look at their criteria and what are their criteria in joining the police department, right? So I want to point something out because I asked you that question because it has happened to some of my students, right? They failed for whatever reason for the cadet corps, right? And they're asking the question, I wonder how am I going to do when I really join the police department? They're going to have your record, yes? Right? Because you did the NYPD cadet and they know that you failed for whatever reason, right? Let's just say the reason was, he or she was arrested in the past, right? So my point being is that I need to know the reason for that question because if you don't do well on the cadet background check, more than likely they'll know when you join the police department, right? Because in a way, it's still under the umbrella of NYPD. Does it make sense?
No, there aren't.
No, there are no guarantees. If your son goes out to be a cadet and he does not make it for the psychological exam or a background check, like he says, and arrest, that will affect him becoming a police officer, yes. Because it's going to be for the exact same reason why he will not get into NYPD. So, yes. So, to answer your question more directly, having a degree and not getting into the cadet program for one of those specific reasons is not going to be an acceptance into NYPD because you have a degree from John Jay. No, you still need to get into the program based on your right, exactly. The application process is still important.
Just to clarify for the parent, I'm an alumni and I was in the cadets programs and I was a police officer. Don't ask me why I'm not in criminal justice, but I'm with the DOE now. And the cadets program is comparative in the sense everything has a process. Just like if you come into John Jay or any QL school, you have to take an entrance exam, right? You pass that, depending on that, you get remedial courses, what have you. So with the cadets program, it's like when you get your 64 credits, you have to get your 64 credits first. Then from there, you go through a paperwork, it's a process, right? Like any other, like a job. So once you get there and you are kind of finished with the process, a psychological test, a physical exam, then you become a lot of the students that break is between balancing the academics towards the program. That's where people start failing. And then you have to take the exam. The beauty of the cadets is like when you take that exam, I don't know if things changed from the past, it's that you're already doing the physical where you volunteer at the parades, you kind of do the work without the badge and the gun. But you there, and it's compared in the sense that you have to maintain a GPA, you have to go through its process, and then they give you the exam. Once you take that exam, it's kind of more easy than the non-competitive or the competitive because you're already in the program. So it's a program that once you maintain a GPA and you kind of is checked with everything in terms of your background, I mean, you are part of the program. It's just that you have to be well-rounded and you have to maintain what the program asks you for. So it's not something that is you can achieve it, you can be there. But you have to qualify for everything that the program is going to ask you, like any other type of program. Does that help?
Yeah, the biggest barrier that students have when they try to apply for any agencies is psychological. And what happens is, we all have kids, right? And your kids don't always listen to you. They don't listen when the person talks. And what happens is they'll say, draw a house. The students will end up drawing a house. What we saw, we grew up in the inner city. You know, we'll draw a big building, bars on the window, whatever we're accustomed to. That's not what the assignment was. It was to draw a house. And because of that, they have some sort of problems passing the psychological. With the real-world experience that we have, believe it or not, it's not in my curriculum, but we do take time out to explain that. So now your son, when he goes to take the psychological or take different aspects, because of the experience we have, yeah, he will have the upper hand. It's not guaranteed, but he will do a lot better than a lot of other students.
Yes, that is true. I have a lot of students that come to me on a regular that are actually going through either the process for NYPD or the process for the Cadet Corps. And I have an extensive amount of information to give them because I've been through it. And I know many people who have and have not made it through and vice versa. So the advice that we can give your son when he's going through that is very different from many other schools because most of us have been through it and we work with the students here that actually are going through it. So that would be kind of a leg up for him.
So I'll just say two things about the psychological exam. It is a difficult exam for a 20, 21, 22-year-old, right? Because they're playing games with your mind, right? Right? And one of the questions, it keeps coming back because my students would ask me, what should I say? The question is, have you ever smoked weed? Or have you drank alcohol, right? It's almost like a catch-22. If you say yes, you know, they might disqualify me. But if I say no, they may not believe me. I had a student, he was Muslim. He goes, I've never drank alcohol. But the psychologist kept no, really, seriously. No, for half an hour, kept plugging away. No, seriously, have you? No, so it's a mind game, right? So, it's not easy, right? And there's a written psychological, and then there's an oral psychological, right? So we try to give the students some guidance, right? Whether to be this needs to be truthful, or this one you can kind of get away with, right? So on and so forth, right? So we try to help them according to the what are some of the issues? Okay. Any other questions? Anybody?
So as far as the curriculum and the coursework, what is a typical class like then? So just to understand what's involved in criminology and how you go about teaching that sort of subject in a manner.
Right, so we can just go, well, according to the bachelor's or degree, there's several mandatory courses that each student must take, right? And then there's electives, right? So just the mandatory is like, Police Science 101, right? Talks about the 3 sections, talks about police, it talks about corrections, and talks about courts. So we break those 3 things down before we go into more advanced courses, like crime scenes, right? Police labs, and so on and so forth, right? So again, it gives you a foundation first about the whole criminal justice system, right? So for my example, I had an economics degree. I didn't know those 3 sections. I knew what police was, but I didn't know in depth what does it entail, right? I didn't know that plea bargain, that 95% of the United States, all the the potential criminals were 95% with plea bargain. I didn't know that, right? So a lot of things you learn through academics.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump in and answer that question as well. Just like Professor Tam, my bachelor's degree is not in criminal justice. My bachelor's degree is electrical engineering, and I actually started working in that field. And I decided I did not want to work until I was 65 years old. I did not want to work for the next 45 years of my life. I wanted to work 20 years, do what I love, and then have an opportunity to either stay or do something else that I have developed that I loved over the years. So that helps in that sense. But to go to your question, I'm going to give you an example of a class that I teach. I teach a CJBS 300 class, which is a policy and theory class. So the classroom would be similar to this. Some classes are big, some classes are small, depending on the course. My average class is about 30 students. And it's usually not this big, but it's in a classroom. And so an example of something we would teach, let's say we're discussing the policy of stop, question, and frisk. So we would go into the detail of stop, question, and frisk, how it was developed, why it was developed, what it's supposed to do. And then we would look at the theoretical side of it. What is it really doing? How is it really affecting the community? How is it changing the way people feel about police? How is it changing how people feel about law enforcement or the criminal justice system? How is it affecting mass incarceration? We look at all different aspects of a particular issue, and then we move on to the next issue. But what that does is it gives the student a very well-rounded aspect of the policies and programs that they are going to actually be enforcing out there in the streets. Because remember, law enforcement means you are enforcing the laws. So to just say, go do this and have an officer go do it is one thing. But to have an officer enforce laws that he understands and that he understands the theory behind it, why it was developed, how it was developed, and how it's affecting a particular community, gives that officer, the educated officer, which is a great thing that law enforcement now is getting officers that are more educated, is that now that officer is able to make a decision when it comes to his or her discretion because he's more educated. He now has more understanding. So maybe he stopped a woman who has a baby stroller, and you got a call that she's shoplifting, and you go in and you see her in the CVS with her baby in the stroller, and underneath the baby is all kind of diapers and creams and stuff, and she's crying. You now have a background and a better understanding, and you're able to say, you know what? There has to be a better way than just locking this person up and sending this child to child services. So they get that better understanding of what they're actually doing. So now that officer may, when it goes to the district attorney's office and it comes time for prosecution, that officer may now say, listen, to the district attorney, we have to find a program to help this woman. Just taking her child and putting her in jail is not the solution. We need to try to get some kind of probation for her and then try to get a program where she won't have these issues in the future. So that's the type of mindset that John Jay puts into its education as far as social change and helping communities and things like that. Right?
Any other questions? Questions? No? Oh, there you go. Who's running? I got it. I'll get the next one running so you don't have to. Yeah, we'll break it up. So we're not running.
Thank you. How does John Jay specifically help their students with the exams? Like you said, if you get 100 and this person gets a 98, how does John Jay help those students on promotional exams or other exams achieve that 100?
Well, we have a couple of courses. One is called Police Manager. So now, basically, we're putting you in the shoes of being a supervisor. So we'll go through the theories of sometimes you have to be a leader that's a dictator, right or wrong. I need you to get that car and arrest this person. Then we have some other sorts of methodologies where you might have to be democratic. Listen, we have to break into this house to do a search warrant. I'm thinking we should go through the front door. And then we all sit down and think about it. Well, Sergeant, the front door I heard is reinforced. Let's go through the side door. So with the numerous courses that we have, we do prepare you, believe it or not. Police operations, police manager, I know are two of the courses that we give. And not only do you have it in theory, and then we actually go through some of the things and the techniques that we've used to solve problems.
So that's a great question, right? We teach that indirectly. A lot of these questions, right? During the police exam, you're going to look at a picture, right? There's a time, there's two individuals, there's a car, there's so on and so forth. And they're testing how's your memory, right? So when we talk to our students, we talk about, one good thing about John Jay in comparison to other criminal justice colleges that they hire a lot of practitioners, right? Where we are cops, but at the same time we have at least a master's degree to teach, right? So when these things come about, and they come up to you, I have an answer. Well, be careful. They're going to ask what time is in that picture, right? So indirectly we teach these things, but again, it's usually the students actually initiate it because I'm taking the police exam. Give me some tips on how to do this, that, and that. How do I get from, there's a maze, how do I get from point A to point B in the least amount of time, right? So we teach you that, during office hours or something, but usually it's indirectly. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, okay. Any other questions?
We got to fill this time. So we talked about this in the last session, and maybe you guys can jump in wherever you want to. One of the things that I try to express to the parents, and we discussed it in the last session, and the students, you have to remember one important thing. This is college. You're going to have a lot of freedom. You're going to have a lot of time to do what you want to do, to go to class, to not go to class, to study, to not study, to do well on exam. Your parents may not even stay on top of you because now you're in college. But parents, if you can, stay on top of them for the first couple years. Just keep the pressure on, because we've seen it all. We've seen students an A student, just because of now all of this freedom, coming to the city and going to John Jay. And listen, stay on top of it. And for you students, remember, it's what you put into it is what you get out of it. So if you want to be that homicide detective, or you want to be a crime scene detective, or you want to be an FBI agent or something like that, you have to put in. You have to maybe change the way you are, maybe put down the social media, maybe get off of social media, and just understand that this is your life, it's your future, it's your career. You are in control at this point. Your parents are actually, even though a lot of them are funding it, they are handing you the steering wheel, and now you're driving. So you have to make the choices that are going to get you where you want to be. Always think of your future, you know. And also, just a quick side note, because I know you want to jump in on this topic. Watch your social media when it comes time for NYPD. They will sit you down with your investigator. He will turn the computer to you and say, log on to Facebook and Instagram. And they want to see what you've been posting. They want to see what kind of pictures of you turning it up. And you doing, you know what I'm talking about, all of that. So be careful of that.
Every Friday can't be Liddy night, right?
Exactly. You can't be getting lit every night, all right?
And another important aspect of this, and I see this often, is due to circumstances, the student may have a full load of 12 to 16 credits. Like because of financial aid, you must take a full load. They also work full-time. And they're also taking care of their grandfather. You see I'm going with this, right? Usually when all this occurs, something usually gives. And I tell them on the first day, something usually gives. Maybe your social life gives, maybe a lack of sleep, right? Maybe your grades will go down. Something is going to give because it's too much on your plate. However, I would not tell them, please go quit your job. Go, don't take care of your grandfather. I would never say that, right? But just be cognizant that if it's too much on your plate, usually something goes, right? So you have to make a decision regarding that, right? I just want to say that I think that's what I've seen often, okay? Because they have to work, because they have to help pay the rent for their mom and dad, so on and so forth. You see what I'm saying? Any other questions?
You know what? Tam, give her the other mic.
I just want to know how, like, you were able, like, to start up. Like, where did you start, and, like, what things did you do to help you make successful and be the type of person you are now?
I like that question. So my dad's my hero, so I always just wanted to make him proud. So after high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life whatsoever, and I didn't want to waste $100,000. So I was like, the Coast Guard's awesome, because a lot of people don't know, it's the only branch where you don't have to pick your job right away. You get to job shadow for 6 months to a year, and then you pick the job you want to do in the military. And then you go to training for that job. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines are all great branches, but you have to commit to a job that you know nothing about, just what the recruiter's telling you before you leave. So like after my time in the Coast Guard, I came here to John Jay, and I was like, I just want to get this degree done as fast as possible. And I wanted to get a 4.0, so I took classes year-round. I took 6 in the fall, a winter class, 4 in the summer, which I had to get permission from the dean to do, because it's like not allowed. And I also interned as well. I was a law and society major. That major provides you with amazing internships if you guys want to look into it. Judicial ones, where I interned at the Bronx Supreme Court. And now I got a letter of recommendation from the judge, so it gives you a lot of other things besides the actual internship experience. It gives you a connection and networking and things that are important. And then I definitely would not have been as successful as I was if I didn't ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. Nobody's good at everything. I suck at math. There's a math and science tutoring center here. There's also a writing center here. I went to all of those every single week. You can go there when you have a paper and you don't even know where to start. You're like, hey, listen, I have this paper with this topic, I don't know where to go. They'll make an outline with you. You can go back the next week with that outline. They'll help you with your introduction. And you can go every single week and turn a B paper into an A paper easily. Same with the math center. I went every single week for college algebra, which isn't hard for some people, but was really hard for me because I hate numbers. So John Jay gives you all the tools you need. It's you deciding that you want to use them. And maybe you want to hang out with your friends community hour, but you know you have to get that paper done. So you have to take that time to either go to the library or go to a resource center. And you also have to ask your professors for help and not be embarrassed. It could be, you feel singled out when you're raising your hand during class sometimes. Email your professor their office hours and go and see them and ask for that help, because I don't think I would have graduated. I know I wouldn't have graduated as fast as I did or with the grades that I did if I didn't ask everyone around me for help. It may come off as annoying or you're asking for a lot, but it gets you where you need to be when you get help from other people. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that's the end of the session. We'll still be around for a couple of more minutes, so you can come up and ask us personal questions if you like, okay? Enjoy John Jay.